everyone. My name is Ruth Gotian, and welcome to Optimizing Your Success, sponsored by the Mentor Project. Hi, everybody. We have an amazing, amazing group today, and I lost count of how many time zones we are representing. So as a lot of you know, I study high achievers and especially elite high achievers. And we have all heard that misery loves company, but what has become really evident to me was so does success. And successful people like to surround themselves with other successful people, and they like to bring people up with them, which is really the whole premise of the Mentor Project. So today we've spoken many, many times about networking and building your network and building those relationships. But today we're going to talk about how to meet interesting people. And this group in particular has met some of the most incredible people in the world, not just big, big names that you would recognize, but people who have done amazing things, sometimes with names that you don't even know yet. So today we're going to talk about who they are, who are some of the great people who they have met throughout their career, but more importantly, how those people have helped them. But before we do that, we are going to introduce our motley crew today, and it'll be in the order that I see them as always. And again, we have many time zones. We're hoping everyone stays awake. So Janice, you're ready. Who are you? And don't tell us who you met yet, but tell us in a tweet, what is it that you're known for?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm known for hearing accessibility. As you notice, whoops, wrong side, the ear symbol on behind me. That's one of the projects I worked on. I'm also known for I'm on a quest to visit every country in the world.
Awesome. And what's your name?
Oh, Janice Lintz, sorry.
And because we have people from literally all over the world today, Janice, where are you based?
I'm based in New York. Right now I'm based in New York during the pandemic.
Awesome. Tell us, who is the most famous person that you met?
The most famous?
Uh-huh.
That would be hard because, not to sound obnoxious, which this will, I've met a lot of famous people. So I would say, when I went to Davos, I would say I met a lot of famous people at Davos. But each of the people I've met, I have found super helpful. But
just one.
Just
Name
one.
Impress us.
I'll impress you. Okay, Richard Branson.
Fair.
And because that'll lead to a good story.
All right. Let's see. Chris from California. In a tweet, what are you known for, and who is one famous person that you met?
Oh, known for? Probably nothing, quite honestly. No, I was back in the 90s, I was a professional rollerblader. So the guy that slid down handrails and jumped over cars and all that kind of stuff. So it actually enabled me to be on ESPN2 and be have a lot of ability to meet people that I wouldn't have met in my life. So I don't know that I'm really known for that, but it was a major part of my life, and it kind of shaped who I am today. What I do right now is I find hackers in computer networks. So that's
Ooh,
I
nice.
actually work with Patrick Kelly, who actually wishes he could be here. But yeah, I work with Patrick pretty closely, and yeah, it's fun. I enjoy.
Bring him next week.
Yeah, and I enjoy. Sorry, I've got the dog fire going on. It's fun for me to teach people about things that they don't understand, and computer security is one of those things that I think a lot of people struggle with, and so for me, it's very fun to help them understand exactly the kind of risks that are out there today.
Love it. Thank you. A rollerblading anti-computer hacker. Got it. Susie Katz, welcome. We're going to continue with the West Coast people. And I think I'm not going to ask the rest of the people who are the famous people that they met, because this is the intros will just, I just realized you guys know a lot of famous people. So who are you in a tweet? Tell us who you are and what you're known for.
Okay, I am Susie Katz, and I run an organization called Photo Wings. I'm probably best known for that. I'm also a photographer. If you go to Susan Katz Photography, you can see some of my work. And I've photographed in about 70 countries, so I'm probably best known in the photographic field, but I'm morphing that into education. So I straddle those worlds.
Beautiful, thank you. Continuing in California to Beverly Hills, Liana.
Hi, I'm Liana Shauli. I am best known for being the one and only image therapist, or style sage. I provide transformation through the empowerment of wardrobe, action, and language. I think the most famous person I've ever met was being blessed by the Pope and got to kiss his ring. So that was a big deal.
Ooh, nice, nice.
And I have to
Kelly.
apologize, Ruth, that I have to leave early. So if you see me kind of slip out the door, I have a client consultation I have to be on.
All right, got it. So we are going to be blessed with the time that we have with you. And Liana is the reason that we try not to wear black on screen. We're all working on it.
Some of us have failed.
My favorite astrophysicist, Kelly.
Hello, thank you. I am Dr. Kelly Korak, and in a tweet, I'd probably best be known for studying why the sun is trying to kill us and how to prevent that. So I work on satellites and telescopes to study the sun and the phenomenon of space weather and how to prevent the harmful things like power outages and astronaut safety and other issues.
Wow, glad you could join us. Now we are going to, well, you guys are in the same area, Kelly and Lieutenant Colonel J.J. Snow. Who are you? And in a tweet, tell us, what are you known for?
So I'm known as a super connector and an innovator. I span public-private sector partnerships, and I also span different communities and cultures. So you'll find me equally happy in the Comic-Con community or the hacker community or with some high-performance athletes, and connecting all of them in interesting ways to solve wicked problems. And the most famous person I ever met was Steve Wozniak at Silicon Valley Comic-Con. He's very cool.
Oh, wow. Nice. From the UK, he took a nap to make sure that he doesn't fall asleep during his time with us tonight, because it's in the middle of the night for him, all the way from the UK, who just published his 5th book. Andy.
Good evening. I'll just hold my eyes open while I talk to you. Welcome from lockdown London. I'm known for being a specialist in professional relationship strategy. So I work with my clients to help them build, nurture, and leverage their professional relationships. The most famous person I've met was probably former South African President F.W. de Klerk, the Nobel Prize laureate and the man who released Nelson Mandela. Had the pleasure of speaking alongside him a few years ago.
Nice. Thank you. David, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say, my tweet would just be, I want to be JJ when I grow up. And she said everything I would have said, but better than I would have said it. I'm a former naval officer and then decade-long acquisition professional in the Navy. I help run Naval X, which is the Navy's innovation cell. Work with JJ, actually. And then the most famous person I've met, the boring answer is Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, who I worked for a while. The more interesting answer is Lisa Loeb, when I went to one of her concerts in my 20s, and she said my name before I could say hers. So
wow.
My mom's friend's daughter was a friend of hers, so that was how that happened.
Mom's friend's daughter. All right, it's all about the connections. Now, David, for those of us who are not in the military, in layman's terms, can you explain what you do?
Sure. Like JJ, we are trying to connect the Navy and Marine Corps, the acquisition workforce for those two organizations, with internal resources industry resources and academic resources that'll really make us a more 21st century force instead of a very solid 20th century force.
Super connectors, love it. Now, I don't know who, we have a black box. Deb, can you help me out? Is it Tahuri?
Yes,
I don't know.
it is Roman Touri.
Oh, hi, how are you?
Very fine.
Oh.
Sorry, I don't, I'm not very famous. And, but I mean, my work and what I do most is building health information systems for developing countries. And let's say I'm known at the Ministry of Health level in several African countries and developing countries. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Susan.
Susan me?
Susan Silver. I know you're going to knock this one out of the park. Who are you in a tweet?
I was a television writer, Mary Tyler Moore Show, Bob Newhart, Maude. I have an NPR commentary called Susan Says, and I've just done my memoir, Hot Pants in Hollywood. And for this very topic, I've met over 120 famous people, but I'll just start with Elvis and leave it there.
And you also had a really, really special friend who just passed away.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. It's the best of times and worst of times.
My okay.
Friend for a long time, Sean Connery, and somebody I dated in the 80s, Alex Trebek. So I'm having a bad time. The good news is that someone I hate, Donald Trump, is going to leave us. And I've met him, unfortunately. So that's about it.
So I want to talk about the incredible people that you've met throughout your career. And again, maybe they're famous, maybe they're not, maybe they've just done incredible things, but they have impacted your life in a really, really special way, an influential way. And you probably would not be where you are in your career if it were not for that person. Does anyone have a person like that? Go ahead, Susan. Go ahead. We don't raise hands. This is not third grade.
I'm sorry. My mentor was Gary Marshall, who was very well known in show business. But maybe I misinterpreted the topic tonight. I thought it was, how do you meet interesting people?
Well, we're going to get there.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So yeah, he was my mentor and helped me get the Mary Tyler Moore job, which was, as I've said, starting on top, and then it was downhill for the next 20 years. So just kidding.
Did I freeze or did Susan freeze?
No, she didn't freeze. She's totally alive.
I'm alive and well.
Oh, so I missed part of that. So it was Gary Marshall.
Yeah, Gary Marshall was my manager. He managed young writers, and he got me the appointment at Mary Tyler Moore. And then I wrote for 20 years. And if not for him, it would have been a bit of a struggle probably, but he got me the appointment, and that was starting on top.
That's impressive. And how did you meet him?
I was doing casting for Ronan Martin's Laugh-In, which young people Google. It's a show in the 70s. And I met a girl who was managed by him. She went on to write Beaches, Iris Rainer Dart. During that time, I obviously met every celebrity in the world. And then I was in the world of politics. So I met a lot of people there. And now I'm in the world of Israel. So I've met everybody there. And you just keep moving. You just keep moving to different worlds and going up to people and saying hi.
Right.
Yep.
I totally agree. I totally agree. So this is such first of all, I love this topic because I think that the way to meet interesting people is to be interested. And I've always been curious and interested, and I, don't have, or I've never had this thing where, oh no, you can't do that. I remember when I was in, I became a couture designer early on in my life. And then when I came from Europe to America, I went back to school to the Fashion Institute, and our class got to be at one of the Giorgio Armani fashion shows. And we got to be there when they were doing the dress rehearsal, and Giorgio was on the stage. And everybody said, no, you can't go up to him and talk to him. I'm like, watch me. So I just ran onto the runway. There was nobody in the audience. I just like ran onto the runway and I started speaking to him. I speak Italian. So I just started speaking to him in Italian, and he was so happy to finally have someone who spoke Italian that he took me alongside him and showed me everything and sat me down, and we just had a beautiful conversation. And I think that one of the things that I learned early on in my life from my father, he just said, look, if you see something that sparks your spirit, go and find out what it is. Speak to the people that are doing it or having the conversation. Just go immerse yourself in it. Yeah. And don't let fear stop you. And I think my father, was one of my biggest mentors. He showed me what it was like to be interested and curious. Yep. And that nothing but myself could stop me.
I'm just going to say one fast thing about what she did, because I don't do it when there's Secret Service, because they get very nervous. I was in Israel and I was at the King David Hotel and I saw Shimon Peres walking down. I said, oh, I want to meet him. And they said, well, you can't. And I said, sure, I can. So I ran and I said, Mr. Perez. And about 6 armed guys came around me. But he said, oh, present yourself to me, my dear. So we had a lovely talk. And then I saw him the next day at his house. So, just be careful they don't shoot you.
No, you're right. But you know what? The last person I did that was Stevie Wonder at the Peninsula Hotel in Beverly.
He couldn't see you, though.
Huh? No, but you know what happened, Susan? I came up to him. And he could smell me and he said, hi, beautiful. And he held my hand.
God.
I swear to God. And I wasn't alone. I was with a friend. And he could sense that I was there. And he grabbed my hand and he said, what a beautiful surprise to be surrounded by beautiful women. The fact that he even knew that and that, right.
Maybe he's not blind. Maybe it's been a lie.
No, he's got, so, but what I'm saying is the chances of someone getting in there and stopping you are still worth taking the risk of doing it.
Not when they have guns, but okay, go on.
There's a key point there in what Liana's saying as well that holds a lot of people back. And okay, I mean, the story I'll share isn't to do with Shimon Peres or Stevie Wonder, but a number of years ago, I was moving out of the business that I was running, which was networking groups. And I knew that I wanted to focus on my speaking and working with corporates and networking groups. I'd been working with smaller businesses, and I knew I needed to learn where networking was relevant for larger organizations. And some people I knew were running an event in the Midlands in the UK, where the founder of a well-known retail chain in the UK was speaking. So I drove up and went to the event and listened to the talk. And at the end, I went over and I chatted to him, and no one else did. I just went up and I opened and I said, I'm thinking about writing a book about networking for corporates and I'd love to chat. And his eyes lit up as soon as I said that. I'd like to feature you. Bang, he was interested. And we had a really good chat. And I went back to my table and he walked past our table, and the woman sat next to me, who I knew, looked at him, and under her breath, I heard her mutter, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. And I said, what are you doing? She said, I want him to talk to me. I said, well, go up and talk to him. She said, I can't go up and talk to him. I said, why not? She said, he's up there. I'm here. He wouldn't want to talk to me. I said, Heather, I don't know how well you know the geography of the UK. We're not as big as the United States, so it's probably the end of one state to another, but it was the middle of England to the south of England. He lived south of London. I said, he hasn't driven all the way here to give this talk and then stand on his own in the corner. He will be feeling so inconsequential now because no one wants to talk to him. He will love you if you go up to him. And I had to leave shortly after that. And as I left, I passed them deep in conversation by the door. And it was just that little thing that, I know as a speaker that you finish a talk, it's the loneliest place in the world when you step off that stage until someone comes up to you. And I think that we've talked about a lot of big celebrity names. And, you know, the story I'm sharing is not a big celebrity name, but the business was very well known, and that gives that celebrity by association. And it's very easy to put people on a pedestal and to think, I can't talk to them. And we forget that everyone is just an individual with the same vulnerability, the same concerns, the same fears. And that if we can engage with people as human beings, particularly if they are celebrities, we stand out from everyone else anyway.
I agree with that, because, so funny story, in exactly that situation, I was at the UN, and one of the speakers was standing by herself, and nobody knew then who she was, because if you didn't watch the show Suits, you may not have known who she was, and you didn't know who she was going to become. But I did watch Suits, and I adored her. So I went up to her and I spoke to Meghan Markle for 20 minutes, and nobody then knew who she was. But then thereafter, I went up to speak to the UN General Ban Ki-moon. And again, don't breach security. So immediately, so everybody to get into the UN is vetted. And especially each time you go through closer into the inner sanctum, you're more and more vetted, depending how it's like, you know, going through the Forbidden Palace in China. So we're all vetted. And I went to go to speak with him. And all of a sudden, the security guards come out, just like the way Susan explained. And he said, no, let her speak. And because I did speak with him, I got my, you know, the key is also to have your elevator pitch down to a science, because if you're going to speak and breach that, they want to know what you want really fast. And so they ended up doing a video of me on the UN website. And that was just because they wouldn't fix the UN of the hearing access, which I wanted, but this was like a consolation prize. But if that didn't breach that security or try it, I wouldn't have gotten to that point. Now, on the other hand, I did that with President Obama, before he became the president. He does not take kindly to breaching his security. So I'm just going to put that out there. Don't breach Obama's security.
I breached his. He wasn't that friendly either, but I'm not going to monopolize, I swear, but I just want to say one thing. There are several people in this world that you cannot go up to because they're nasty, and I'm going to name their names right now to punish them. Nathan Lane, who's an actor, who's a real jerk, and Rosie O'Donnell, both were very, very rude to me. And Al Pacino is scary. You don't want to go up to him. But other than that, continue.
We're going to be censored, Susan.
If I can throw something in here, for me personally, I will walk up to anybody and talk to them. I have no problems talking to anybody, because we're all human. And we all, as I believe it was Andy that just said, we all face the same fears, and we all have the same, fears, really. I can't think of a better word. And one of the things that I've done, and I think Susie can probably really relate to, is in photography, which I do as a hobby, and I'd like to take that further. But you can't be afraid of putting yourself into a situation ever. And part of that is really just be yourself and be a decent human being. And people gravitate towards human beings, and if you're truly interested in somebody, regardless of what it is, people relate to that and they gravitate towards that. And just being able to have a conversation with somebody is really important. And unfortunately, I think a lot of that has been lost in this world. But I think that if you just walk up and talk to somebody and be civil, people will respond. And there's always going to be somebody nasty. It's a given. There's always going to be that person. But don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of it. My grandfather was a World War II vet who was handpicked by the government actually to fly over the peace treaty for ending the World War. And one of the things that he taught me was people are people, and everybody suffers from the same kind of things, regardless of race, regardless of any of that thing. And so it probably helps that I'm naturally a Leo and I have no problem talking to anybody anyway. But you know, I think the thing is be fearless and be okay with rejection.
I love it. I love it. Now, let me ask you guys, you've met impressive people who have really helped your career along and really helped you put into action the big ideas that you had. But how do you find these people? How do you find these people? Where do you go? I mean, it's not like some street corner or some bar where they all hang out. What do you do?
Everywhere. You find them everywhere. I have run into the most interesting people in the weirdest places. I was actually doing a tech scouting trip in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I was in a loft of this technologist, and there's a gentleman getting ready to brief, and there's a guy sitting across from me who has a beautiful Irish brogue. And I'm like, oh, let's talk technology. So we start catching up. We're having a great conversation and everything. It turns out it's Peter Dolan from Salesforce. We hit it off. He was fantastic. We talked about all this kind of tech, and the poor guy's standing there going, oh, but my presentation. We're like, no, I'm gonna get a chance to talk. But you just don't know who's in the room. And something I learned from my grandmothers growing up, I had an Irish and a Scottish grandmother. They both babysat and they worked out of the house and did laundry and stitching. And, you know, they both told me, go and talk to everybody, because that's how you learn. That's how you grow as a person. So I have been really surprised how many times I've encountered interesting people, famous or not, in the strangest places. Sometimes they're in the middle of a third world country and you walk into a chow hall and everybody's sitting down to eat and they're right there, and you just walk up and sit down and, hey, how's your day going? And you have a conversation. Other times it's a convention, like a hacker convention, where everybody's there and you've got your blinking badges and your code, and you don't know who these people are, and they're doing something that's interesting. And really what seems to work best for me when I'm engaging with people is having a curious nature, having curiosity for somebody and not being afraid to walk up and say, hey, I'm really curious about what you said, or, hey, what are you working on? Can you share that with me? That opens all kinds of doors. And it's fantastic because, oh my goodness, you learn so much and you meet so many amazing people. We have so many bright people, beautiful people in this world. So that's what here.
What great opening lines. And that's actually something I call starter sentences. So Janice talked about the elevator pitch that you need to have down, but it's also helpful to have something called starter sentences, which are these benign ways to start engaging with people. So you don't have that awkward feeling and that awkward silence. You have these few sentences that you could say, like, how was your day? Or I really found what you said interesting, or I really appreciated that, or I could relate to this. And these are the types of starter sentences that really help to ignite a conversation. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Thanks, JJ.
Yep.
There's a bit of a theme coming up with a lot of things that are being said, and JJ's really brought it out again there. So it reminds me of a Dale Carnegie quote, and that is, the sweetest sound to any man is the sound of his own name. Which it always goes down very well. And it is about showing genuine interest in other people. I hate the question, what do you do? For so many reasons, but you're diving in without getting to know the person. You want to know their job title. You know, what are you working on? What you said was interesting. That's great. How do you know this person in common? Something like that. You're seeking common ground. Find out what people do when you get to know the person first. The other thing I would say is that, you know, there's a lot of talk of meeting famous people, celebrities, business celebrities. Some of the most fascinating people I've met, and Ruth, you said this at the very beginning, they're people you'd never heard of. They work for companies you've never heard of. But what they do is remarkable. Or even in some cases, it's just the way they do it. What they do is unremarkable, but the way they approach it is special. So it's those conversations, those everyday conversations. I don't take the oft shared approach of talk to everyone all the time, which I know a lot of people do favor. And yes, if you're open to conversation all the time, then you never know who you'll meet.
Who wants to talk to everybody all the time?
Exactly. I get on a plane after a long trip, and the last thing I want to do is talk to someone. I want to put my
Anybody.
headphones in and read my book.
For 4
Oh
hours.
no, I talk to everybody. I
Oh,
will go to
no.
a movie and I will know everybody on the plane, on the movie line. But I will tell you, like, so I will know everybody. But this project happened from the taxis, happened because I talked to my taxi driver in London, and he was explaining the process. And then even the background that I had before with the airlines, that happened because I talked to the person on the plane. I mean, on Amtrak, when I was sitting next to someone because I talked to everybody. And she happened to have the email address for the head of Delta. And I traded email addresses. She had a project she wanted to. I will talk to everybody because I always think everybody has a really interesting story.
I would agree with that, Janice, but the difference is that there is, you could get networking books that will give you advice that say always talk to everyone everywhere. I don't think that allows for two things. One is your own personal space when sometimes you don't want to, and their personal space, and you have to read their body language. But planes, for example, I've met some fascinating people on planes, and you know when it happens? When we're about to land.
Yeah,
we end up having a 10-minute conversation when we're about to land, and it's fine. And I've got work out of that, and I've made some lifelong connections out of that. Sometimes it just fits and you chat. But what I'm trying to get across is don't feel forced to do so if it doesn't feel right for you in that moment, or that person's body language isn't immediately available.
Well, the one thing with Steve Wozniak, I was sitting at the Plaza Hotel and I was having trouble with my phone. And I looked over and I saw him and I said to my friend, I'm going to go ask Steve Wozniak what's wrong with my Apple phone. And she said, you wouldn't. I said, yeah, I did. So I went over, I said, Steve, he said, yes. I said, something's wrong with my phone. Could you look at it, please? And he said, oh, I don't know what to do. I said, oh, really? I said, okay, well, thank you anyway. And I said, I never would have gone up to Steve Jobs because he wouldn't have been as nice as you are.
See, now, one of the approaches I've always used, and this is probably part of just my personality, but I always start with humor. If you can make someone laugh, you're always going to have a conversation.
How do you start with humor with a stranger?
You did.
You evaluate the environment and you bring up something that you saw funny in there. Maybe it's something, for me personally, I find something in the environment that I can bring up to make someone laugh. And if I make them laugh, I can start a conversation instantly. And so I think a lot of that probably has to do with the fact that of my job, I have to be observant for my job. And being observant of my surroundings allows me to find something humorous within that environment, no matter what it is. And maybe I'm just blessed with some comedy too. Who knows? But either way,
I'll be the judge of that.
The key is to make people smile, and if you make people smile, I think you'll always have a good conversation, regardless how it goes.
Well, I will say one other thing. Don't go up to a guy when he's in the men's room, because Sean really hated that when people would bother him in the men's room. And he used to talk about that. I think you have to be appropriate to, all kidding aside, you have to have a reason to go up to somebody. Why do you want to meet them? What is it you're hoping to accomplish? And prepare what you're going to say. I believe in being prepared for anything. If you just go up to somebody and say hi and you're standing there, that's not the way to do it.
So it's not about being a fangirl. It's about meeting the people and working towards a common cause.
Or praising them. If it's someone you've admired, nobody, that's the greatest thing. I mean, and if it's honest.
But sometimes you can think you are like being fangirl. And so I was fangirl when I met Bob Woodward in Chile, in the Atacama Desert. And it turned out I ended up helping him to get hearing aids. And so he even said to me, you think, and I apologized to him though, because it was breakfast, but there was no way I was leaving without talking to Bob Woodward. It just wasn't happening. So I went up to him and we started talking and explained I was in hearing access, and we started chatting, and then he asked me to join for breakfast. So I was out of my mind with excitement. And then when I was leaving, I said, this was so gracious of you. I really appreciate it. He said, you think you came up to me and I was helping you, but you actually helped me, because now I'm going to go to the place you recommended to get hearing aids. And he did. And so sometimes I think when we put people on a pedestal, we devalue ourselves. I was still like shocked from the whole thing, and I was able to help him. He ended up going to a place and getting hearing aids, which is so random in the middle of Chile. But so I think more often than not, you just have no idea where that's going to lead.
I think a lot of it is the timing. And my mother used to say, consider your source. It has to be the right time. If I'm going to a conference, I will do a lot of research in terms of who the presenters are and who else is going to be there so that I can try to figure out who it is I want to talk to and then find something in common. And also at some of these places, these people are very shy. And the interesting thing is that they are as interested in learning something that you know as what you want to learn from them. So it's like if you're going to do a photography story, as we were mentioning, I do research, I figure out where I want to go, when I want to go, and figure out who the person is that I might want to talk to. So that's at a conference, but also being observant on the street. I've learned amazing things I was watching a window cleaner once, and he was showing his grandson how he cleaned the window beautifully. And I was so impressed with his attitude. It really stuck with me. And also getting back to the gatherings. I was sitting next to Ariana Huffington at one point, and she was talking about someone who had told her a story about a dowager that was going to have a big party. And somebody said, oh my goodness, how are you going to figure out the seating chart? And she said, the people that mind don't matter and the people that matter don't mind. So it's a cross between understanding, who the person is, that they may be shy, but they would perhaps really like to meet you. So figure a way that is safe. And the other thing I do is I try to wear interesting scarves and some kind of a conversation starter so that they'll think that I might be someone interesting. And if I'm sitting on a plane or someplace where there's some well-known person, I'll take out something like my handout or some photographs and get them curious about what I'm doing. And that makes it easier to start a conversation.
Susie and Janice, you both mentioned something. You both talked about food. And one of the things that I've met more people over than anything else has been sharing food or finding these really neat little food trucks or hole-in-the-wall restaurants that are just super authentic. And you get in there and you meet these people and everybody's in there to try it out. New tastes, new flavors. Maybe they've been to the country. Maybe they're learning how to cook or they're opening their own restaurant. But bonding over food, oh my gosh, that's one of the best experiences. And you meet so many incredible people doing that. I don't know if anybody else has had those experiences, but that's been a lot of fun for me. Tapas or Peruvian or Chinese or Japanese, name the food, you're going to find amazing people in there that are passionate about it or passionate about the culture. And the discussions that take off from there are they're so much fun.
I met Jane Asher over a buffet in South Africa on a film set. I was a runner on the film sets, and she was appearing in the commercial that we were filming. And cool. we just chatted over the buffet and what was there. And I was going back to England. My sister was getting married, and she told me what to get my sister. Recommended a wedding present. My sister hated it, but it was still nice meeting Jane Asher.
I didn't catch who you said.
Sorry?
Who was it that you met?
Jane Asher, Paul McCartney's ex and the actress.
Right. I hate to keep throwing negative stuff out here, but I think with famous people, it isn't right to accost them when they're eating in a restaurant. I think that usually doesn't work out well, and I understand that. It's their moment of being with their family or privacy. So I don't know about, regular people when you're sitting at a table, but I don't think it's a good idea to go there.
I don't think that was the point, Susan. And for example, we were in a buffet together.
No, not you. I'm not talking about you.
No,
I'm
but
just saying.
But I don't think it was about accosting. I don't think JJ's point was about accosting people in a restaurant. It's about the conversation over food, and you bond over it. I totally agree with you. I don't think you should accost anyone in their private space anywhere. It should be a natural opening to a conversation.
Yeah,
I do want to take a moment. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Janice.
I do what JJ does. Sometimes like I have such food envy that I'm afraid that if God forbid I eat something and like I'm in the restaurant and I might miss something. So I have to survey what everybody else is eating like around me. And then if I see something that looks like amazing, I might ask the person next to me, may I ask you what that is? I've had and met the best people that way and had the best conversations. And sometimes we end up trading food. When I was in Kuwait, we traded food. And I was like, and what was really unbelievable was the person was Palestinian. We didn't ask religions, but this was like this incredible bond over food. And then like, they said, you must try this because it was some regional dish. And I'm like, okay, then you're going to have to try my food. So I will meet everybody. I do exactly what JJ. I love looking at seeing what everybody is eating.
I
want to take a moment and welcome Bruce.
Sorry. Hey, Bruce.
I just want to take a moment to welcome Bruce. They don't even need me this week. I'm just listening. We're talking about how to meet really interesting people, and we've got all sorts of interesting do's and don'ts. Sorry, David, go ahead.
No, I think that one thing I've noticed is if you ask people how they're doing and don't do it in the traditional American small talk style, which is not hoping for a response, I think that is actually how you can really get some good conversation going. Whether it's, sometimes at the grocery store, which, hopefully you're not slowing anyone down there, but in general, if you ask how people are doing and then you wait for the response and you let them know that you actually want to know. I mean, I think that's something that I find to be surprisingly effective when trying to have a conversation with anyone. Like a lot of you have said, whether someone's famous or not, a lot of people feel overlooked, or like people are only trying to use them for, their fame or their skills or the need they have at the time. So for you to even take that moment and ask, like, how have things been going? Or do you have any, not this year, but in normal years, do you have any trips planned? And then actually letting them talk. That's
absolutely,
it's really effective.
I think one of the challenges that a lot of people have is a lot of people want to talk about themselves and not necessarily listen to what anyone else has to say. And I think it's if you approach somebody and you're genuinely interested and you smile, which smiles go a long way. Just be genuinely, just be genuine. It's not that hard. I actually prefer to meet people that aren't famous personally. And it's because the people that aren't famous tend to be more interesting to me than the people that are famous, because everyone knows about everybody that's famous. It's the people that help that person get famous, or the person that's working on a cure for cancer, or whatever that happens to be. Those are the people that drive me to meet more people. It's just, that's what motivates me to embrace humanity and embrace life.
That's so true. And in fact, the most successful, the most high achievers, they will actually surround themselves with people who can teach them something. So it doesn't matter if they have reached the top level of their field, they are still wanting more, and they still want to learn more. And they learn that in many different ways. They'll read books, they'll talk to people, they'll communicate. And it doesn't have to be people who are in their field. In fact, most of the time it's not people in their field. And they'll go up to people who are senior to them, they'll go up to peers, and they will go to people who are junior to them to get more information and to learn new things. So it's really about just engaging in conversation with interesting people. But I think we still need to, and we might continue this next week, is how do you find these interesting people? Because we're not going out to eat, right? We are in a virtual world, and it's despite the news today, with the hopeful news today, it's still going to be this way for a while. So we need to really start thinking about how we can meet people in a virtual world. And I think we're going to discuss that next week. But I do want to piggyback on something that Andy said earlier about the question, which, Andy, I hate this question as well. What do you do? That is probably the biggest conversation ender I have ever heard, because you can say, you know, I'm a doctor, I'm an astrophysicist, I'm an actor. Okay, and then what's the follow-up question to that? Right? It's like a dead on arrival kind of response. So I always suggest to people, instead of telling people what you do with that one title, right? I'm a writer, I'm an actor, I'm a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant. Tell people what problem you solve, because that opens up a whole line of conversation. So Kelly and I don't know very much about astrophysics. If she told me she's an astrophysicist, I'd sort of sit there and I'd be like, oh, that's nice, right? Like, what am I supposed to say?
Oh yeah, especially if I say I'm a physicist, it ends conversations. I know how to end it.
Right? But Kelly, if I were to ask you, what is it you do? And if you answered, instead of saying I'm an astrophysicist, if you answered it with what problem you solve, what would your answer be?
I'm trying to stop the sun from killing us.
Yeah, that's tell.
Wow.
How?
Oh, what do you mean?
I'd like to know
How?
that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how?
Exactly. So I am trying to understand, when the sun throws temper tantrums, how to prevent blackouts in New York City for over 6 months.
Temper
How does
tantrums? What do
the
you mean by
sun throw
temper tantrums?
Yeah.
See, there's so much there. You also need to be on the other side of this, is be able to have the conversation and do the little lead-ins, not the like, here's the whole story. Here's 4 years of my, the last 20 years of my life and what I've done. Like, no, here's a little bit, and it's interesting. So, let's talk about it.
How does it?
How does it? It has massive explosions that sends off billions of tons of material that can induce currents in the earth, and then those currents would short out power systems, power grids, and possibly wipe out power to New York City for.
Is that happening now?
It could.
But has it?
Quebec had a power outage due to this effect a while back. So it has happened, and it will happen as the sun gets more active, or it's more likely to happen. So we do need to.
Ta-da!
See?
Conversation. I want to know more, though. I'm dying to know this. I'll have to call her.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and
This
I
is how it's done.
I think that kind of plays into, knowing your audience. Like, Kelly, if I walked up to you and said, hey, how's your day going? Because that's probably how it would start. It'd just be like, whether it's we're sitting next to each other or whatever it'd be, that's how I'd approach it. Just be like, how you doing? Because I'm genuinely interested, and you'll be able to see that I'm genuinely interested. And then we'll get into a conversation. If you told me you were an astrophysicist, I'd be like, okay, we need to talk. Because I have a general interest in literally everything. I'm just genuine. I want to know everything. It's a great goal, probably not an obtainable goal, but it is a great goal. And so I genuinely have an interest in everyone. So while I definitely agree with Ruth that if you said, I'm trying to solve, the sun wrecking the earth, we're going to have a deeper conversation on that. But on the flip side, if you told me you were an astrophysicist, we'd still have a conversation. Just like if you said you were a genetic engineer, we would start having discussions on CRISPR, because I'm a generalist. I know enough about a lot of things that I can have a conversation, but I always want to know more, and I don't know enough to really dive deep, but I know enough to understand what you're saying. And I think those kinds of things are important. I think
But recognize how you introduced yourself at the very start of the show, after you told us about the rollerblading. Remember what it is that you said that you're known for?
Being fearless?
No.
No, I don't. It was so an hour ago.
What is it that you say that you do?
Well, I'm genuinely interested in people, and I want to.
Wasn't it about hackers?
Well, yeah. So I find hackers in computer networks. So part of that is digging into things that don't make sense or seem out of place or whatnot. And part of that is understanding the thought process behind somebody that would potentially penetrate a network, right? So understanding how to break down how somebody thinks about something is I think really important. And that has a lot to do with what I do as far as understanding how somebody would hack a network, or how they would social engineer somebody to give up the information that they probably didn't expect to give up. 90% of hacking today, given the computer, given the security that's out there today, 90% of hacking is social engineering. And it's getting people to give up information that they didn't want to give up, or they didn't even realize that it was important to them. And I'm kind of good at it, I guess. So, it makes conversations easier. Now, I'm not saying obviously you want to go out and meet people and try and steal their password, obviously, but part of that is having a genuine interest in everything and people, and being able to have that discussion and pivot on the fly, and making them smile, and making them lower their guard. And part of having a good conversation, I think a lot of times, especially when you get into the world of people that are famous and probably on guard a lot of times, is to break down those barriers to them being guarded about sharing information that maybe they're not comfortable sharing. But it's about trust, and
yes.
And given where I grew up in a small town in Illinois, and my entire life was based on trust, and based on relying on people, and based on not doing people wrong. I mean, fortunately, I grew up in a very good family and people that taught me those good values. But that's what makes me an effective person in the job that I do, because I'm not on the bad guy side, I'm on the good guy side. And part of that is teaching people the tactics that bad guys will use, right? But it knocks down a lot of walls if you can just actually be a genuine person that's genuinely interested in what people have to say, and not take judgment. And that's something that I think is a big challenge today, is people judge people because, oh, you feel this way or you think this way. Well, for me, why do you think this way? Why do you feel that way? That's what I want to understand. I want to understand the person, not the socially accepted norm, I guess, if that makes any sense.
It does. Now, Bruce has a very interesting way of introducing himself. He always tells people what he's not before he tells people what he is. Do you know what I'm talking about, Bruce?
Yes, I am not the martial artist or that star of Enter the Dragon. So I just heard that a lot of people use food to meet folks, right? So let me just get this straight. So you use food, but it's not good to start a food fight, right? That's not the way to meet people. Just wanted to make sure.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Sometimes that's totally okay, depending on the circumstances.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, it's all about being innovative, right, and creative.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I found that you know how there's the prom king or the prom queen phenomenon, where like you go to a meeting or a gathering and there's certain people that everyone wants to meet, and everyone like gravitates towards a person. But I've actually found that like just meeting people, just anyone, can be helpful because you learn about the person, and you don't like approach these meetings like I'm going to meet this person, that person, this person, but instead just be open to meeting anyone, because it's actually quite amazing, like the interesting people that you actually find. And I've actually found that by talking to just all kinds of folks, that actually may lead you to talking to ultimately the person that everyone wanted to talk to.
That's right.
Like I've been, I was in a situation where I was just chatting with someone on the side that the First Lady, Michelle Obama, she was at that meeting. Everyone wanted to talk to her. And when I was talking to that person aside, we got to know each other. Then that person said, "Hey, you want to go chat with Michelle Obama?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." So it's a situation where you never know who might know people, but like I didn't go in talking to that person saying I want to talk to the first lady. I just thought, it'd be interesting to find out why the person was here. And it turned out to be, the person was very interesting, had a lot to say, and we got along. So I would say, like, I know these books sometimes say, strategize, decide who you're going to meet, work the room, that kind of stuff like that. I don't know. I've never been really good at that. I've been very bad at strategizing like that. My strategizing is, okay, that looks yummy. I think I'll eat that. That's the amount of strategizing that I do. So I can't plan far ahead, but it's amazing what serendipity will bring you. So that's what.
Can I speak as the relationship strategist here? Because I totally get that, Bruce. And what I've always said is understand what you want to achieve and who can help you get there. But once you go into the room, if we use that environment, be a human and connect human to human. And I talk a lot about having a blended mindset when it comes to relationship building. So by that, I mean that you combine a partnership or strategic mindset, which is who do I need to meet in order to achieve my goals, and a relationship mindset of who do I get on with, who do I have a rapport with, and let me just see where that takes me. And actually the two combined work really well. It was interesting what you said about the serendipity and the 6 degrees of separation, effectively. If you remember, some of you might remember Clout, the social indexing site that was popular a few years ago and then died a very quick death. In the early days of Clout, you could see who influenced who on social media. So if the classic example, and Janice mentioned Richard Branson earlier, was if you wanted to reach Richard Branson with a tweet, Richard Branson would ignore 99.9% of tweets that were addressed to him. But through Clout, you could see whose tweets Richard Branson would read. And the majority of those people were not famous. So if you could tweet to those people things that resonated with them that they would then share on, Richard Branson would engage with them. And that's the sort of the social networking example of the real life example that you gave there. But the strategy does have a role, and we've talked a lot about bumping into people and seeing people across rooms. And I know you're going to talk a bit about this next week, Ruth, but I'm not there, so I'm going to jump in. I can't join you again next week.
I was hoping I could ask you again.
Yeah, I've got you caught a light week this week. Luckily, I've got a lot of podcasts booked in. But that's one of my points. Is you can be strategic about meeting key people. For the new book, I interviewed about 40 or 50 people, including World Cup rugby coach, senior politicians, and more. For my podcast series, I'm just overwhelmed with the level of the people that I've interviewed. The former CEO of Porsche and BMW, Charlie Kamada, who I met through this panel, and Ruth. I interviewed you and Janice, but some really fascinating people. And actually reaching out to people when you've got a book you're writing or a podcast you're recording. And a few years ago, that would sound quite elitist, but now everyone has the ability to do these things. And podcasts of the modern day. In British football, we had fanzines where everyone would write their amateur magazines. You can reach out and say, I'm doing this. Would you be interviewed? And you get an hour-long conversation with someone one-to-one who might otherwise be inaccessible. And it's a phenomenal way to do it. So creating that vehicle through which to have not just a quick brush past conversation, but a serious in-depth conversation. And then all the follow-up when you release their interview is a great way of doing it.
Yeah, and I want to add that I will be what Andy said, strategic and not strategic, like Bruce. So I will do, and this was a technique I learned from, in Of All Weird Places, The Devil Wears Prada. Where she has that book with all the faces and she has someone whispering in her ear who everybody is. So I don't have the whisper, but if I'm going to an event and I don't know who the person is, like it's not that famous, but somebody important, I will Google search their, image search, and I will print out the image with keywords next to it. And I will have, like a list of people I need to meet, and I will plan. So, and I will even go to events specifically to meet that person. So I needed to meet Glenn Lowry from MoMA, this executive director of MoMA, because I couldn't get through the people below him to get the access in. And so I went to an Economist magazine event where he was speaking, and I waited by the front door, but a reasonable amount away. So it wasn't like I was pouncing, but he would have to check his coat. And I stood like at a strategic distance away that I could see him, but I didn't feel like, you were saying like I was stalking the man. So even though I was. And so when he came and he was speaking, the best time to reach sometimes people is before or after. He arrived early, and I was able to speak to him. The access went in as a result, because he was just kind of hanging bored. Nobody knew he was there. The event happened, and I was just waiting for him. So he was happy I spoke to him.
I love it. Guys, we need to wrap up, and you've given me so many ideas and so many things that I really want to talk about. Networking is relationship building is one of my favorite topics. You guys know that I study elite high achievers. I'm writing a book about it, and I can go on and on about how I met these people and connected with these people. And it's, I think, going to be relationships that last long after the book. I mean, it's been years since some of the interviews, and these relationships are still really, really strong. So I think we're definitely going to continue that conversation. I think we're definitely going to talk about how to meet people in a virtual setting. Janice, I want to tell you what you said with the pictures reminds me when I used to do admissions for MD, PhD programs. I used to have a sheet with everyone's picture, where they went to school, a little bit about them. And then I used to write in something from their application that was a conversation starter. Figure skater, worked at Dairy Queen, worked at the Genius Bar at Apple, something to start that conversation, which was different from the questions they'll be hearing on their interviews all day long, right? Because sometimes you need a different approach, not talk about what they always talk about. So we are definitely going to continue this next week. We're definitely going to talk about how to meet people, interesting people in a virtual setting. I definitely suggest that you listen to Andy Lopeda's podcast, which is called Connected Leadership. And we have so much more to talk about. We're going to continue, but if people want to reach out to you guys afterwards, let us know how they can reach you. Bruce, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so if you Google Bruce Wiley instead of Bruce Lee, if you Google Bruce Lee, you'll get a lot of like martial arts and Chuck Norris pictures and things like that. Bruce Wiley, or I'm a senior contributor to Forbes, so it's Bruce Wiley Forbes to read what I read, and my website is brucewiley.com.
Thank you. Susie.
You can find most of my work these days at photowings.org, photowings.org. And if you want to see a little bit of my own photography, it's susankatzphotography.com.
Which is gorgeous. Janice, where can people find you?
At hearingaccess.com.
Beautiful. JJ.
LinkedIn, JJ Snow. That's it. I don't do other social media. Thanks, Ruth.
But you are active and you post incredible posts. I learned so much from your posts on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy. Where can people find you?
AndyLapata.com, Amazon, the Connected Leadership Podcast, all good bookstores and some rubbish ones as well.
Show your new book. You have
the new one.
The new book that's coming out.
It's coming out on the 7th of December. Just ask why seeking support is your greatest strength. 3 years of hard work and a lot of interviews with interesting people. Thanks.
I got to read a preview. It's really good.
Thank you.
Kelly.
You can find me at kellycork.com or on Twitter, Kelly Cork.
Thank you. David.
I just put my LinkedIn in there, David P. Schiff. Like JJ, I would say an abuser of LinkedIn, probably an overuser. It's how I meet a lot of people, actually, even pre-COVID. Also, a quick shout out. Thanks, Andy. That's great. I'm looking forward to picking up some of your books. And my sister wrote one last year called The Compassion Code, which I think is very relevant right now. Her name's Laura Jack. It's just a fantastic book. I edited it, actually. So anyway, it's really—
That's a labor of love.
quite relevant in these times.
Chris, how can people find you? Yeah, get off mute.
Yeah, I was looking for that. Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I try, because of my profession, I don't share a whole lot of where I am and what I do online. So the Mentor Project would be the best place to find me, honestly. You can always find me on LinkedIn. Mitzloff is not exactly a name that comes up a lot on LinkedIn, so likely you can find me there. And I would say that's the best place to find me. At some point, I will actually get my training website set up, which is thatdidn'thurt.com, because the whole thought behind That Didn't Hurt was sometimes learning stinks. And if you can make it easy and make it easy for people, the kind of whole thought was that didn't hurt. So, but yeah, I'm not there yet. So LinkedIn or the Mentor Project.
Chris, as an adult educator, I'm really happy to hear that. That makes my heart sing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Debbie Heiser, can you come from the shadows? Tell us where people can find you.
Hi, check us out on the Mentor Project at mentorproject.org, the Mentor Project on Facebook, Mentor Project on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, you name it, we're there.
And all of the above.
Thanks for a great show, guys. I was laughing behind the scenes. You guys are amazing.
Thanks, everyone. My name is Dr. Ruth Gotian. I can be found on my website, ruthgotian.org. On all the social media, it is just my name, Ruth Gotian. Lots of good stuff there. We are going to continue this conversation with our incredible, incredible people. This is what it's all about. You surround yourself with incredible people. And if they can be different from you, there's no one here who does what I do. I don't think we have two people who do the same thing here, but we learn so much from each other. And each and every week, I'm just here to just facilitate a conversation. I am absolutely learning so much each and every week, and I'm so appreciative to everyone. We will see you next week, Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you to Dr. Debbie Heiser and the Mentor Project for hosting us once again. See you next week. Thanks, Andy, for staying up.